Hey guys, Jared here, and today I'm going to review the film, or re-review the film, The Great Race by Blake Edwards, starring Jack Lemmon, Tony Curtis, and Natalie Wood. So yeah, I did have a review of this a few years ago, but that review was when had seen the movie for the first time recently, and I think my reviewing skills have gotten better since then, and honestly, I do also have a lot more to say about this film now, because I absolutely adore this film now. I mean, I loved it when I first reviewed it, but I've come to love it even more. And I'd say now, honestly, this would have to be my number one favorite movie of all time. Yes, I said it. So the plot of this movie is you have two daredevils. You have Professor Fate, the sort of villain, played by Jack Lemmon, and you have the hero, the Great Leslie, played by Tony Curtis. And you do also have uh, Professor Fate's like sidekick Max, played by Peter Falk, and you see at the beginning that Great Leslie does like stunts and stuff, and like you see Professor Fate trying to sabotage him, and that's really fun. And you see Professor Fate and Max doing stuff, and their stuff goes wrong, and that's really fun. And then Leslie wants to start a race like from New York to Paris, and of course Professor Fate joins in and wants to beat him. And you do also have Maggie Dubois, played by Natalie Wood, and she's a reporter, and she wants to like report on it while she's part of the race. She brings a camera with her and takes pictures, and she has like pigeons who fly back to the newspaper headquarters so they can print those pictures. And when you do have the scenes with the head of the newspaper company, played by Arthur O'Connell, and his sidekick, who's played by Marvin Kaplan. They're really funny scenes. I mean, Arthur O'Connell's character, Henry Goodbody, he hates suffragettes, and Natalie Wood's character is a suffragette, and that's why he has a problem with her. But then it turns out that Mr. Goodbody's wife is a suffragette as well. So that's pretty funny, and it's kind of like, why are they even married? But yeah, that makes for great comedy. And I will say, I mean, in my old review, I did mention like it takes a bit for like the actual film to start, because you do have like the overture for a few minutes, and one of the songs they play in the overture is the Sweetheart Tree. They play it with the lyrics, and then like when then you have the opening credits starting, and the opening credits they're playing the instrumental version of the song the Sweetheart Tree. So it was kind of like, oh, they're playing that song again. Now when I watch it, I don't so much mind, because I mean I really like the music they're playing. The music's by Henry Mancini, who usually did a lot of work for Blake Edwards films, and he is a great composer. And it's just nice. And that Sweetheart Tree song they play a number of times in the film, and that's a really nice song. So I don't mind listening to that. But the actual race of the film doesn't start until about 40 minutes in. And some of the stuff like before the race starts is pretty fun as well. But I think when the race starts, that's when the film properly starts getting going. I mean, the race doesn't start until about 40 minutes into the film, and I do kind of feel like maybe it took a bit too long for the race to start. But after the race has started, the pacing is fantastic. I mean, it goes by so fast. I mean, this movie is 2 hours and 40 minutes, and it doesn't feel that long. Honestly, it goes by so fast. And you do have other people in the race, but you know, Professor Fate and Max they sabotage their cars. So then, Professor Fate, Great Leslie, and Maggie Dubois they are the only people left in the race. But it is funny, like Max accidentally sabotages their own car, and then, he says like, "Oh, I did this to car number five," and then Professor Fate's like, "Haha, but Max, we're number five," and then their car breaks down. That's hilarious. Yeah, Professor Fate and Max are definitely my two favorite characters in the movie. Um, yeah, at the beginning of the film, it does say for Mr. Laurel and Mr. Hardy. This was sort of Blake Edwards' tribute to Laurel and Hardy type comedy, and I can see a bit of a Laurel and Hardy between Professor Fate and Max, and yeah, a lot of great slapstick in this film throughout. And the places that they stop at, like during the race, are fantastic as well. When they go to the town of Baracho, I love that. And they have the singer Lily Olay performing, who's played by Dorothy Provine. And she sings that they shouldn't have not swung on me. And they played a bit like an instrumental version of that song in the overture at the beginning as well, and that's a fun song. And when uh, Tony Curtis, Great Leslie, starts chatting up to like Lily's boyfriend, Texas Jack shows up, and then it starts a big fight in that place, and yeah, that's a really fun scene. And yeah, Larry Storch, who played Texas Jack, he only passed away 2 years ago now, and he was 99 years old. So he lived very long. I think he was probably one of the last main cast members of this movie to pass away, and that's sad. But yeah, he had a very long life, which is impressive. And there's also part where they end up in this country called Carpania, and the prince there is called Prince Hapnik, and he's also played by Jack Lemmon. And they notice he looks just like Professor Fate, and they swap them out, and they get Professor Fate to pretend to be Prince Hapnik, so then he can be crowned king. And also in like the Carpania scene, you have this big pie fight, and it's considered the biggest pie fight in film history. And yeah, it is just fantastic, and it's also hilarious how for a while it's like Great Leslie isn't getting anything on him, and yeah, they're really playing up how much of a stereotypical hero he is, and like he can't get anything on him. He's always perfect and white. But he is a very interesting character as well. He's not just a generic hero, and I think Professor Fate isn't just a generic villain. Jack Lemmon has a really great job playing him, and he has great chemistry with Max, and he does a great job playing the Prince Hapnek as well. He's a very drunk prince. He's a very fun character, and he has loads of like pugs as well. I guess that was meant to be like how the British royal family have corgis, and yeah, and I do also like when Professor Fate pretends to be him, and like all the pugs come on the bed, and he's like, "Get off of the bed!" Yeah, that's fantastic. And I have seen some people consider this film kind of a musical. I mean, it doesn't have that much singing in it, but yeah, I guess it's a musical in the same way like something like a Laurel and Hardy film is a musical, or a Marx Brothers film where they have singing moments, but it's not a full-on musical. There's only really two like big singing moments in the film. There's one I mentioned where Dorothy Provine sings that song, and also there's a bit towards the end where Natalie Wood starts playing on a guitar and sings the song "The Sweetheart Tree." They played that song a few other times in the movie, but Natalie Wood actually sings it towards the end of the film. Those are the only really two singing moments in the film. And I have said before that my favourite musical is Bugsy Malone. I guess, yeah, it is still my favourite. And I prefer this film overall, but this film isn't that much of a musical. It doesn't have that many songs in it. So I'd say I prefer this film as a musical, but I prefer this film overall. But yeah, those two songs that I mentioned that this film does have, those two songs are really great songs, and I do really like both of them. So yeah, this film is set in like the 1900s, and I do really like that, the period setting in this. And yeah, it was sort of inspired by the fact that in 1908, I believe it was, there actually was a race from New York to Paris. Now, this film doesn't have much to do with that real life race, but that's where they got the idea of this from. And also the whole idea of it being a race, some people compare it to It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, with that being another film about a race from the same time. Um, yeah, I see the similarities, and I love Mad, Mad World as well. That's a fantastic film, but I'd say I preferred this film overall. And there are three actors who were in both films. Those actors are Peter Falk, Dorothy Provine, and Marvin Camplin. So there's that. And the ending of this film, they sort of hint at maybe there might be a sequel. And unfortunately, they didn't make a sequel because this film wasn't that big of a hit. I mean, it's gained a bit of a cult following now, thankfully, and I'm definitely part of that following. But unfortunately, they never made a sequel. But I don't think it was left with a cliffhanger left open, because I mean, it is an open ending, but it's not like, oh, we're definitely going to make a sequel. It's just kind of an open ending. And I like the ending as it is without there being a sequel. I like kind of imagining in my head like what happens next. So yeah, I do really like the ending of this film, even if we never got a sequel. I don't think it's an ending that needed a sequel. You know what I mean? And of course, with it being a slapstick comedy directed by Blake Edwards, it's kind of similar to the films that he made with Peter Sellers, like the Pink Panther movies and also the movie The Party. But I will say, I do think this is maybe a bit more family oriented than these. I mean, I know like the Pink Panther cartoon, you could say that's for kids, but if you watch the original Pink Panther movie, it clearly wasn't like really a kids movie. It was meant more for adults. Whereas I can see with The Great Race, I can see it aiming a bit more at a family audience than these films were. And yeah, I think you could watch this with your kids. I mean, maybe one thing, like, it might be a bit too long for some kids, but you know, you could show it to your kids in parts. You could show the first half and then take a break and then show the second half like that. One thing that's notable about this film is that this actually influenced the Hanna-Barbera cartoon Wacky Races, which is cool because I mean, I used to watch Wacky Races when I was a kid. You know, you could say the great Leslie, he's a lot like Peter Perfect. Professor Fate is a lot like Dick Dastardly. You know, she's a lot like Penelope Pitstop, and you know, Max, he's a lot like Muttley from Wacky Races. Although I did also hear that Dick Dastardly was sort of based on the actor Terry Thomas as well, which is cool. And I know they did a spin off of Wacky Races called Dastardly and Muttley and Their Flying Machines, which the title of that is referencing the movie Those Magnificent Men and Their Flying Machines, which was a movie starring Terry Thomas. Yeah, I first heard of this movie because I knew somebody who said that you know, this was a real childhood favorite of his, and you know he absolutely loved this movie growing up. And yeah, and watching it now, I kind of wish I had seen it, you know, at a younger age. I mean, I would have loved this as a kid, but yeah, I will definitely show this film to my future kids one day. So yeah, if you're a fan of slapstick comedies from this era, I definitely highly recommend this film. It's just really a lot of fun and definitely my favorite film of all time. So yeah, hope you all enjoyed this review. What are your thoughts on this movie? Thanks everyone for watching my review and stay tuned for next time, guys. Bye.